Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and this week I'm speaking with lifelong outdoorsman and world's second best turkey caller, Guy Zuck. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. Guy Zuck, not Zook. Thanks for thanks for coming on, dude.
Hey, you're very welcome. I really appreciate it. Good to be on with you, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. I realized even with that, I told you I had two meetings accidentally scheduled for you. One said your name the wrong way. The other one said Guy Zuckerberg. So I don't know if that was an autocorrect thing. And then you're in my phone is the wrong name. I need to go through everything and fix all your stuff. But
It's all right. People get my name wrong all the time, but please don't confuse me with Zuckerberg. Man, I would like his bank account, but that's about it.
yeah, well, I can't imagine there's too many national champion turkey callers out there. Or weren't you? Wasn't it world? Was it world or national?
Second, second in the world, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And
that
that's I start these episodes with a little introduction, and I think that's a great way to lead into it. So for everyone listening, this is Guy Zuck, as in Zuck, not Zook, like I've thought it was for the past 2 years that we've known each other. But I am endlessly fascinated by people, whatever it is, when people find something that they are total nerds about and just go all in on it, and you certainly fit that criteria. Guy and I met, I I was at a very bad spot in my life. I don't even remember how exactly we got connected, but this was right in the middle, like the heart of my alcoholism. And Guy was the kind of person who would give you the shirt off his back, and we got connected. He tried helping me out early on, and we've gotten to know each other a little better over the last couple of years. And as we just kind of touched on, Guy is one of the top turkey callers in the world, and this is his avenue that he's gone down. That is his nerdy thing that I want to really get at today, and that whole journey to how you go from a normal kid to someone who's obsessed with this stuff. And now, I mean, you guide some of the big names in the industry.
well, when I was a kid, I grew up in Tuscumbia, Missouri. It's a little bitty small town, and there wasn't nothing to do but hunt and fish. And I love that little town. It's always be home to me. But we had some, we had a farm, and my dad bought me some turkeys, and I just found out that I could mimic them, and there was nothing to do around the house all day when I wasn't in school. So um, I learned just about every sound that they could make, and I just became passionate with pursuing them. I killed my first one when I was just a little bitty kid, and I killed my first legal one when I was 11 years old, and Missouri fall turkey season, and just was a little obsessive, actually a lot obsessive. But
It's definitely a lot obsessive. I've talked to you about this stuff. It is a lot obsessive. And I checked out the episode to Meat Eater that you did with Steve Ranella, diving into all this stuff. And you're as you're talking about Henrietta, which I'm sure we'll talk about here, but you're I think Steve asked you about you mentioned what kind of turkey she was or something, and you sounded like Bubba Gump naming off all the different kinds of shrimp. You're like, well, there's a white hen, a red hen, we got all these different hens, and it was I I don't know. I thought it was hilarious, but I mean, you grew up with turkeys in your house. Is that right? Or were they outdoor turkeys?
Oh no, we let him in. Me and my little brother let him in the house all the time. Which I mean, my mom still to this day wouldn't be happy about that, but we bring him in the house all the time. Uh, yeah, we had a barn, we had mules. They would roost on the back of mules. They would never roost in the chicken coop or the turkey pen. They would always go out and roost on the back of those mules on the house, on my mom and dad's vehicles. I was constantly in trouble for spending more time with them than I did anything else. But that was one chore Dad never had to ask me twice to do. I always took care of my turkeys.
Well, and
And
he was in Vietnam, right?
yes, my dad came back to the States just a couple days before that Tet offensive. Uh, he missed that, but he did serve his country over there.
Did I'm assuming he's the one who got you into hunting?
Well, just by buying a farm, he didn't want his kids growing up in the city. Him and mom, put every last penny they had to buy that farm. It was an old rundown 2-story white house, and they have, remodeled it and taken care of it. I think it was built. I don't want to misspeak. I hate it when people do that, but I think it was either 1908 or 1911. And the reason that is, I don't know, is there was two houses right there close together, but they built them houses out of oak, and they are just as strong now as they ever were. But mom and dad fixed it all up, and I had 160 acres to run and hunt and fish on. One story I didn't share, Steve, but I love this story. We had a creek close to us, and this day and age um, would be highly frowned upon, but back then things were so much different. My mom would go to work. She worked in Jefferson City, which was about 40 minutes away. She would haul me off at 7 in the morning, drop me off at a slab. Uh, I would fish that creek all day long, and she would pick me back up on her way home from work that night. And that's just some insight to the kind of childhood that I had.
And what this was all, I mean, were you just in like backcountry Missouri this whole time?
Backcountry, our Tuscany with a population of 211.
Oh my
When me and my
gosh.
I know me and my wife moved away, they had to change the sign, right?
Wow. That's that's so wild. So, but you're up in Michigan now, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, it was a long trip to get here. My own dark times and my own struggle with alcoholism, and um, yeah, I learned a lot about myself in the last 10 years, Zach. That's why your story touched my heart so much, man. I'm so glad that you're here and on the other side of it with me.
Yeah, you and I believe I think we share a sober date. Is yours December 6th?
It is. Mine's
Okay.
December 6th, 2016.
Yeah, I couldn't remember because I think you had texted me to check in and I was like, yeah, man, I finally hit a year, even though it was, 2 years, more than 2 years after I'd met you and had already told you that I was struggling, but I hit a year sober on December 6th and you were like, that's my date. But do you know, I mean, for you, what do, I would imagine you've thought of this. What kind of kicked all that off for you or led down that road to starting to struggle with it where you were using that as a coping skill?
Well, just for all the wrong I had done in my life, uh, on the outside looking in, I like I said, 47 years on this planet. I started making mistakes, puberty, and alcoholism, drugs, uh, just bad decisions, pornography. Um, you, it's hard to explain how miserable a person I was. 47 years away from God, but more than that, well, not more than that, but equal to more away from my family and away from um, just a way of who God made me to be. I lost all my passion for life, and I drowned that
What when you're saying 47 years away from God, are you saying like you were you 47 years old, like kind of when this developed, and you were saying that you hadn't found? Because I know you're a religious man. What I'm getting at is, were you religious before, and you're saying you had stepped away for 47 years, or just you were kind of 47 the whole and hadn't you weren't religious yet?
I wasn't, I hated Christianity. I'd never give up an opportunity to badmouth it. I'd always say, I believe in God, but I'm always closest to him when I'm out in the woods, the classic excuse. I just, I wanted nothing to do with him because it seemed like every rule he had was something I wanted to do. But the more I did things you know, I mean, Zach, I mean, I drank every day. I smoked pot every day. I watched porn every day. I tasted everything in the world.
From a
Huh?
teenager through adulthood, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. And it
I
just
didn't
got
realize.
progressively worse and worse and worse. Um, and, you're a product of your surroundings. And, all right, I surrounded myself with people that thought the same way I did. Now, look, I had good people in my life. A guy named Brett Thompson that ended up talking me to go into that men's encounter. That really helped me along. That was the thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That caused me to hand everything over to the Lord. But that misery and pain I carried for so long, I drowned it with alcohol. And everybody asks me, if there's anything in your life you could change. I always say no because I have a wife and kids, and I got a new life now, and everything is different for me. And I know I will never struggle with suicide again. I know I never will. But if it was one thing that I could rid myself of, it would be alcohol. I mean, it was what started uh, me down the path that I went. Yeah, I got no love for it, man, at all.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I've this comes up a lot just because I've also struggled with alcoholism. I have nothing against alcohol for people who can handle it, but it tends to be like people like you and I who decide to use that as a crutch that's when it's like, okay, I need, probably shouldn't be doing this at all. Because it's like once you, at least for me, once I've kind of unleashed the beast, there's no going back with it. And I think
It was the
that's
same with
hard.
me.
Yeah, and
Same, Zach.
that's hard for people to understand. I guess, did you grow up, were you surrounded by someone who was struggling with that stuff and that, or were you just connected with the wrong people? I mean, you mentioned starting all this stuff as a teenager
Well, they said there was nothing to do in our town but hunt and fish and drink, break the
and
law,
your cousins.
all of yeah. I mean, everything. It was all right there, and there was no God in our house. Now, look, my mom and dad found religion; they're following the Lord now, but that didn't. It's nothing against them. It's just life. We just had none. It was just a life of do whatever you wanted to do. I just squeaked in with the 60 babies. I was late 69 when I was born, and we just grew up in that era where you just did whatever you want, whatever you made you feel good, and
It was the counterculture.
our culture, right?
Did you did you butt heads with your dad on that? I mean, I would imagine guy coming back from Vietnam is like it sounds if you were in that the free love movement, that was kind of polar opposite probably to what was ingrained in him from the military.
Yeah, me and my dad have butted heads. There was a time when we got really close, but neither one of us was following the Lord. We were both not. And then he changed his life, and it just caused animosity and turmoil for me when he did. I feel like I lost somebody. And, that's a whole different story. But me and my dad, we're in a good spot now, and my whole family, uh, we're in a good spot. Just seems like every single person in there is you know, doing better. But yeah, me and my dad, I love one of the stories. My dad, I my a world bearing had went out of my truck when I was like 16 or 17 years old, and he wanted me to learn how to fix it. So I was trying to fix it, and he comes down to me and to tell me all the ways that I'm doing wrong, and I'm like, well, thanks a lot, Mister Goodwrench. And whoo, did that turn into a tussle in the yard? That was those 2 words that, so it was that kind of relationship. He was a military man and I didn't go. I chose to stay home and drink beer and live a good life. And that's another regret
Yeah,
of mine. I wish I'd have served in the military. I've got a son, Mark, that's was in the Air Force, that I give up for
Chair Force.
adoption.
You
Yep,
said it wrong.
Air Force. Amen. I got another son, Ethan, who just returned from serving in the Marine Corps. And I got a younger one that I'm really wanting passionately to go into service, but I just missed it. I just didn't do it, Zach. But I wished I would have.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I figured we touch on this later, but you do what you can to help and help veterans now. Do you want to do you want to dive into that now? I figured we'd probably go through things more chronologically, but let's do that.
Well, it's a passion for me to give back to veterans, and it has been for a long time. Even in my dark times, look, one veteran in a million years is too many, right? One human being is too many. Um,
You talking
what are we
about
losing now?
suicide?
Yeah, 2, 3 a
Yeah,
day to suicide. I mean, it's just
22. It's
22. I
it was
mean, it's
22. It was 22 when I was in the Marines. I've been out since 2018. I heard that it had gotten as high as 40 during COVID. And so that's just American veterans.
and I misspoke. I'm not a mathematician. It was 1 or 2 when I was in high school. Now it's up to that number.
Yep.
Um, that's how far we have not come uphill, right? We've went downhill, and those men and women go and serve our country and have to come back and listen to the filth and the hurt and the pain of the I don't want to get political, but the liberal left, right? They don't understand that we need policemen. We need men and women protecting us. We need them, and they come back here to that feeling very unappreciative. And it's my goal in my life to say, hey, look, man, you man and miss, you are appreciated. There is a vast majority of Americans that love and appreciate what you have done for our country, the sacrifice that you have made for us. I just want to give back just a little bit, however small that is. I have a veterans hunt for deer every fall and for turkey every spring. Um, we have a veterans encounter in Missouri, that I'm passionate about sending veterans to, so they can find Christ and find a support group. Uh, I will fight to my death to eradicate suicide, from people. I want people to know that, look, there's another side to this. Um, there's another side to this. There's a life that you don't see, that there's people that love you and want you right here, um, that appreciate you. It's not worth it. And it's just not worth it. I'm so grateful to have you in my life, Zach. I know we don't talk all that much. You're so busy, and I am too. But man, I tell your story 50 times a week, man. To those that need to hear it, because you're a blessing on the other side of this. You're helping people. You have something that nobody can take away from you. I did this, but I wished I wouldn't have. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I know what I would have missed. I mean, you're
Yeah.
such a blessing to so many people.
Thanks, man. I mean, I think that if I had heard someone with a story like mine talking when I was, especially in those final months as I was headed to the point of pulling the trigger, that I probably would have spoken up. And speaking up is what has saved me in this time since when I've had struggles. I would argue that the worst depression I've ever had was actually after I was blind. And I stayed out of the bottle for that. That was before I picked up the bottle. And like, I hadn't realized I was struggling with alcohol before I shot myself, but I didn't realize that I was an alcoholic because to me, an alcoholic was a guy passed out on the bus sitting in a puddle of his own piss. And not me. I'm not an alcoholic, but and because then I went a long period without it. But And the worst depression that I've ever dealt with was in 2021. I'd been back out on my own for like somewhere between like 6 and 9 months. I bought my first house and it was mid-COVID. And I knew I didn't want to be here anymore, but that time I said something. I told my therapist and I said, I don't know why I don't want to be alive. I feel it in my bones that I do not want to be alive, but I also don't want to act on it, nor am I going to. And that was a couple months of, us going from talking once a week to talking every day and sometimes multiple times a day. And it was like pulling teeth, just like getting sober. Sometimes people will say like, hey, you just got to take it minute to minute. And it was like that with these fucking crazy thoughts that I was having. But that's the whole reason that I'll scream this stuff from the mountaintops about like you have to speak up, man, because especially vets and active duty guys. I mean, it is, I would say more so for vets because I think there's a hard line in the military where, especially like in infantry units, you have to be hard. Mental health stuff is a little different than, someone being a pussy and trying to get out of things or just bitching out. The mental health stuff is different, especially when it's coming from head trauma and stuff like that. I mean, we know that literally can cause hormone imbalances in the brain and kick all of these things off. But when you get out, at least when I got out, I still had that mentality of like, okay, you need to shut up and suck it up. And I thought that that skill set and that ability to do those things in physical environments was synonymous with doing that in a mental context, and it wasn't. But for
It's not.
you, yeah, for you, I mean, it sounds like you, and I will come back to, I really want to talk about this hunt that you do and dig into what you're talking about when you say these encounters, because most of the people are listening aren't going to know. But I want to focus on this for a minute. When this draw for you to specifically attacking this component of veterans, veteran health, or however you want to encapsulate that. Was that your own experiences with suicidal thoughts and depression that guided you there?
Well, it's a long roundabout story, but it all connects in an amazing way. So in 2016, I was on a that was my 47th year. That was when I started um, really wanting to be somebody different, and um, not just wanting to be somebody different. I wanted the person that I was to cease from living. I felt like I had made so many bad decisions and done so many things wrong that I was incapable of one, being forgiven, two, incapable of being loved, and three, incapable of having any kind of future because of my past and so many mistakes.
Were
Um,
you were you kicking ass in the other areas of your life though? Like from that, like you mentioned, you said something earlier about from the outside looking in, you were living productively and all this.
very much.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a good job. You know, like I said, on the outside, I had a wife, two kids. My wife would always say, I have a faithful husband. She would always introduce me as a faithful husband, and it just used to just cut me to the core because I knew the truth. I was not a faithful husband. The hunting trips weren't always hunting trips. You know, I use
Yeah.
that as an avenue to, you know, find validation for myself. Just sickness, man. I don't know how else to say it, but I ran 5 farms in 3 different states. I worked nonstop uh, for little, um, no recognition. It was a, it was a very dark, dark time for me, and I'd had all of it I could take. Uh, you know me, I'm a relatively good guy. I laugh and joke and have fun, and nobody knew what I was struggling with. Not one person. I kept it
Yeah.
hid from everybody. And it was just, I mean, I'm day to day, some days minute to minute. And you know, I went on an elk hunt in 2016 with a good friend of mine, and that was I had it in my mind that was going to be my last trip. I went up in the mountains, took a gun with me, and I got down on my knees and just said, God, I've heard you're real, but if you're real, by God, I need to know, I need to hear from you right now. And I heard from him, and nobody can ever take it away from me. And he gave me three things to do. One, quit drinking and the drugs, and quit cussing and taking his name in vain. And that was one. Two, I had to lose everything to gain a life in him. I had to lose it. And three, I had to tell my wife everything. And look, I was good with the first two things, but that last thing, there was no way on God's green earth I was going to tell my wife all the stuff I had been doing. Um, but then I started trying to quit alcohol, but December 6th, 2016, I laid it all down, man. This God is my witness right here. If I live another day or another 100 years, uh, I'll never touch it again. Either of it, drugs or pot or alcohol. I let it down. And you said something that's very important. I got friends that drink, okay? And I've got a friend that, constantly pushing me. Hey, man, you want a beer? You been off long enough? You want a beer? No. Well, hey, man, Jesus even drank. Well, yeah, Jesus did, but he didn't get drunk and cheat on his wife repeatedly. I've got that on him. It's just a no. It's a hard no, and it will always be a no for me. I know if I take that one step back, well, I just can't do it. Um,
Yeah, it's
but
not for all of us. I think both of us
it's
have had
not.
to learn that the hard way. But
I had to learn
and
it the hard way, man.
I'm really, really good at drinking. I'm just not good at stopping. So, and
Amen to that.
I want to come back to this real quick because I don't know if you told me that elk hunting story before. When, I've never had an experience like that, and you know that I'm not a religious guy.
Absolutely.
When you got down, and that's actually it's one of the things I've really respected about you is that you know that, and we can have open discussions about it, but you've never pushed any of that on me, and I've really respected that because I think most people who have a strong faith aren't that way.
Well,
But
I had a road to Damascus moment, Zach, and I know how it was. I know how I was when people tried to push their faith on me. Um, it would just shut me down. I needed to know for myself.
yeah.
I needed God to speak to me in a way that no one could ever take it away from me.
Well, and so what does that look like when it happens? When you got down on your knees on that elk hunt and you're saying that God, you prayed and you heard back. Can you describe that?
Well, I can't because I don't want to cuss. I mean, that's the
Oh,
realism. That's the realism of it. I was mad. I was hurt. I was ready to die. I didn't want to live anymore. And I'm down on my knees. And you can see three states where it's in northwestern Colorado. It's beautiful. But I wasn't coming home. I had it in my mind that my family, my friends, everybody would be better off without me and make it look like an accident. But I just didn't walk up there to finish it. I mean, I walked up there with the plan to be done with it. I knew what my life insurance looked like. I knew how much she would be set with. Um, the looking back, I just cannot believe that I was so blind to the truth, and that was that my family needed me. They didn't want to live life without me. They needed me. But I got down on my knees and I mean, I let him have it, dude. I mean, you know, give him everything I had. And by God, if you're real, I need to hear from you now. Your word says if I knock, you'll answer. And if you don't answer me,
yeah.
I'm checking out of here. And it didn't shout at me. It wasn't a loud, booming voice. It was more like just a whisper. And he said, and this is it, Zach. I'll never forget it as long as I live. If I tell you the story a million times, it'll always be the same. He's like, son, I am real. I'm as real as everything you see and the feelings that you feel right now. And I'm here for you. And to follow me, you're going to have to do these three things. And those three
Did
things,
oh
all three of those came to life. And you talk about the suicide and why I'm so passionate about encounter. Um, it's not like all that just left in that moment. right? I had to face everything.
Yeah.
Uh, I had to face losing a job, which true to his word, I lost everything. I lost my job, my family, or not my family. I lost my house, my car, my truck, my insurance, everything. It was all lost. Something that had been promised to me for 20 years was all taken away, and still one of the very best things that's ever happened to me. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is thank God that he allowed that to happen. But I quit the drinking and the drugs and the cussing. I handed my life over to him, and I was been invited to this thing called Men's Encounter by that Brett Thompson. Um, I had other friends that stood behind me through all of this. Most of them left me in droves, right? Accepting Christ was the end of it, that relationship. Uh, but he got me talked into going to that men's encounter. I went to it in 2017, and it just touched my life. It gave me answers to everything. Um, I confessed everything to Stacy on March 11th, 2017 at 6:28 a.m. And after I went to that encounter, God just and look, I had had none of this at 47 years. None. I
So
didn't believe
was the encounter before you confessed to her or after?
it was
It was
before it.
before.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I had some many confessions, but I just told her like 1/10 of the truth. And
Yeah.
I seen how that reaction was met. So, I thought quitting everything and becoming a better person would do it. That didn't do it. To heal my marriage, I had to confess everything to her. And um, that was February of 2017. I went to encounter. I didn't sleep probably 10 hours until March 11th. I was up all night fighting a voice telling me to tell her everything. And there was a room we have in my old house that I could I'd go down there and I call it my war room because I would go down there and fight with God about telling her everything because I just knew she would leave me. But you could hear anybody walking anywhere, and I'd go down that room and fight with him. And I remember I looked over at my phone, and it was 6:28 a.m. And I said, "Fine, God, I quit. If she walks through that door right now, I'll tell her everything." And as my soul, the door opened and she walked in and said, "Do you have something you need to tell me?" Just like that, dude. And
What?
yeah, I know it, right? So, like, how did she get from upstairs to downstairs without me hearing her?
She's a woman,
And
man. They do
that's
that.
it.
Yeah.
And I
Those
told
powers.
her powers. I told her everything, stuff I struggled with from high school, everything I ever did, man. There's nothing she don't know about me. And I got done and expected the worst. And she looked at me and said, "Finally, you're becoming the man I've been praying for you all these years." And this is the other side of the story. Zach
Yeah.
and I don't share very often. And I promised myself I wasn't going to share today, but I have to. Um, with that come a realization of the person I used to be. You know, um, I confessed everything to her, but it crushed me having to know that she knew everything about me. Does
Because
that
then
make
you had to
sense?
be, yeah, you had to be vulnerable and it was all out there.
And I think I'm not a military guy, but I think a lot of that's why God has me so heavily involved in this is because I understand that pride and that power of, look, I've never made a mistake. I'm never admitting my mistakes. There's nobody I can confide in. And I had 100 men from Encounter telling me, look, you need to stay connected. You need to reach out to people. You need to tell them what you're feeling. I refused everything they told me to do. I did the opposite. I wallowed in self pity. Um, I lost my job uh, the day after Easter Sunday. Uh, got a new job, and look, I fell back into contemplating it. Not just contemplating it. You come home to a family that now knows that you haven't been the person you're supposed to be all these years. Um, Now you're coming home and I'm seeing the hurt on their faces. You don't have you've been ripped out of your home. I professed that promise that was made to me that was taken from me. I professed Him. It was stability, and then all of a sudden it's gone. You know, put your faith and trust in no man. That's one Bible verse I won't ever have to learn again. Um, but it just got worse and worse. Nobody cared. I was alone, and uh, I went to a couple more encounters, had great weekends.
And I want
Um,
to pause here and just, do you want to give everybody a little context as to what, because we keep saying encounter. Do you want to give people some context as to what that is?
so men's encounter is a 48-hour weekend. Um, you get there on a Friday night, and there's no preaching. I'm not much of a fan of religion. Um, I don't call myself or refer to myself as religious or a believer. I'm a knower. I know what Christ did for me, and this weekend was a lot of them stories that I heard. Of how God had touched people's lives. There was nobody forcing anything on me. It was just me and Him and my past, and that was the hardest thing for me to get past. It's 48 hours of food and worship. I never worshiped like that before. I never heard a Christian song, except "Mercy Me." Um, uh, it changed everything about me. It changed the music I listened to. It changed my attitude towards Christ and towards others. I realized that, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one struggling this, and I have a Savior that can bring me out of it, and I have a brotherhood that can bring me out of it. And I've met so many people through that. And still, now this would be my ninth year, I think, in the ministry. Still trying to make it to every single one and bring as many as I can. Uh,
Well, and that's what I was about to mention was I think it's been 2 years now since,
yeah,
but so Guy brings basically people in need. Like when I had met you, like I said, I was at the worst point of my alcoholism. I think I just found out that I had Huntington's. I think I'd already been to rehab and found out that I had Huntington's disease while I was at rehab, and then just got worse. Um,
yeah,
Even though I had finally started making some progress in the sense that I accepted that I needed help, but even that, like because of the fact that it's these encounters are largely, I would say they're religious. I mean, I don't know
yes,
if you think that's accurate, but it seems to be
Christ centered,
Christian. Yeah.
Christ centered.
Okay.
Yep.
Christ-centered things. But I did I went with you to one of these and it was very powerful. It's there's a lot of men. I think the fact that it's all men definitely makes it more genuine and it allows everyone to be more vulnerable. And it's a lot of people struggling with a lot of things, but a lot of the very, very similar things. And I was pretty struck by that, even though, I still, I didn't change my views on things. I mean, it was a very powerful experience. And I think the fact that, I mean, you didn't know me. Again, I don't remember how we got connected, but you didn't know me. You were just like, "Hey man, this thing helped me and I want to see if it can help you." And yeah.
Well,
So
I really appreciated you going with me. And I know it was a long weekend, and you touched so many lives while you were there. Just to have the courage to go to that is incredible. Like I still,
it was way, way out of my comfort zone, man. But I'm glad I went. It was a unique experience for sure.
yeah,
But
yeah.
so because they do those, it's not just in Michigan, is it?
No, it's in Missouri.
Okay, that's
Yep,
okay. I couldn't remember. But so
yep.
yeah, because you load a bunch of you crazies up on a bus from Michigan and drive all the way down there for these every year. That's what I was thinking of. But
Nine nine events a year, five men's encounters and four ladies encounters. Ashes to Beauty is what it's called.
okay.
Um, but yeah,
Did
getting
they
back to that
ever
suicide.
go
Go
ahead?
ahead. Well, Jeff and Sheila Brawley are the one that run it. They started it. The way that this is tied into faith and to our men and women that serve. It's just incredible. They started it right after 9/11. Um, the pull was really for Jeff right after that happened. And there's a lot of veterans that I take to this and go to it. I serve on the security team. I don't know why. I always say that I always joke that they have me on the security team because I'm the littlest. I'm going to get everything first, and that gives them
Yeah,
time to get all
you're the
set up.
decoy.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm the decoy. But look, man, I love those guys, and they know me, and I know them. And if they call me, I'm not asking questions. If they're asking me, I'm coming. And
Yeah.
you know, uh, I'm Christian, but I'm loyal all at the same time. I love those guys. And to be able to say, that I love another man and that, I'd lay down my life for him, I don't just say it just because to say it, I mean it. Uh, they've been with me through some of my darkest moments, and it's made a brotherhood for me. But back to Sheila and Jeff, that year that year that I was going, 2018, January, I was still fighting it. It was still, I could not see why a man would do that to his wife and to his family. Uh, I just struggled with being forgiven, and I would not do what they asked me to, which was stay connected. But I went. I agreed to go one last time in January of 2018, and right before that, Jeff's nephew, uh, who was in the Marines, took his life. And that that encounter, Jeff, he had two choices. He could quit and not do any more of them because it was just a huge family turmoil. It was horrible for all of them. Or he could face the enemy that we all face and take it to him. And he chose to take it to him. And when he took it to him, he took it to me. And that that saved my life. Christ had already saved it, my soul, but that encounter saved my life. Um, Jeff, having the courage to be able to talk about that did it for me. And I shed it in that encounter, and I'll never pick it back up again. It's never bothered me again. The only time it bothers me is when I see Biden on TV. That's the only time I have effects with it.
Are you saying alcohol or suicide?
With suicide,
Okay.
um, I'll never struggle with it again, ever as long
Yeah.
as I live. It's never bothered me. It doesn't even come as a hint. Now, look, do I have dark times sometimes? Do I get down on myself? Yes, but even the remote thought of doing that again. I mean, look what it would have cost me. I'd have never got to meet you. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it or awareness to
Well,
it.
and I think that's having been through it. I mean, even for me, because obviously with having shot myself, I didn't deal with my depression then. But I learned, especially in that I've had other mental health struggles outside of that experience, those couple months in 2021 when I didn't want to be here. But that's when I learned, because I actually dealt with it that time, that it can and will get better, and that sentiment of this too shall pass. That's basically what my therapist, kind of like guided me through, was like this will get better, but you have to show up. And I'm curious, and you may not know the answer to that, but if that's been the experience for you, like having been through it and gotten through it, now it's in perspective, that because when you're in it, it does feel like it's this inescapable thing. But given that you did escape it, do you feel like that was a perspective shift? And that's why you
Very
don't
much.
struggle, or why even when it's in a dark spot now, like that's not even a question.
It's not even a question. I had a wounded veteran up here at a deer hunt. His name was Garrett. Still a very close personal friend of mine. He got his whole battalion got hurt, taken out, and he made it. So he's living with survivors guilt, and as good a human being as there ever was to walk the planet. Um, and I'm struggling with being qualified to do this, and I had just after I went to that encounter, I specifically heard God say He was going to move me to Michigan, and I was going to bring people from Michigan to Men's Encounter in Ashton's Beauty. Well, I just thought that was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard in my life. That just had to be myself talking. It was never going to happen. Um,
Were
but it
you
was
doing
just a
these
couple of weeks.
hunts? were you doing the hunts prior to Encounter in 2018 in that first time?
I was. I was, but they
Okay.
were more my own pride and self ego, just to do something to give back. That
Yeah.
perspective has changed too. I mean, this is 100% about the vets. Every vet that comes here gets a. I don't care if it's a man or woman. I don't care if they're a believer or not. Every person that comes here gets a ticket to Men's Encounter, Actions to Beauty. I'll see to it, or to the Veterans Encounter. Um, they're going for free. I don't know how many people I've paid for. It doesn't matter. I'll continue to do it as long as I have breath in my lungs and money, my wallet. I want people to experience that same freedom that I felt, regardless of what I struggle with. Not struggling with suicide. It just seems like a no brainer. But for me and you know what I'm saying. Not struggling with that has made my days better, right? It's made my life better. Um,
Yeah. Obviously. I mean, that's a heavy thing to be struggling with, but it does, when you've dealt with that stuff, it kind of raises your baseline a little bit for,
it does.
yeah.
But back to Garrett, we had that hunt, and I didn't hunt with him all weekend. It was the last Sunday, and I go sit in the blind with him and find out all this stuff about him, ask him to go to Men's Encounter with me, and he does just like you did. And on the way back, he hands me. We get back, and the next night he texts me. He's like, "The day that we met hunting, I prayed to God, which he had never done. Prayed that, hey, look, if you don't send me somebody or a way out, the day is my last hunt." He come down here to have his last hunt, and he lost. He went that weekend. His dad went. They had a great time. Um, I don't think Garrett's ever been back. It doesn't matter to me because he doesn't struggle with suicide anymore, and his soul is saved. I mean, and he went on. Has he had struggles? Yes, but he don't struggle with that anymore. And that's why I'm so proud. You can face everything if you just keep going. Jeff says you win if you don't quit. And man, I know you're not a quitter, Zach, and I'm not either, but it was hard to keep going, you know.
I am a bad shot, apparently.
Well,
No, but that's and I mean when you say it's like because we kind of did this backwards. Again, I don't remember who we got connected through, but you took me to the encounter and then even after I came back from that and I was like, "Hey man, that's I appreciate that, but that's not my thing." Then you had me up to hunt and like I said, you never pushed it on me again. But those even just those hunts and obviously the impact that you had on Garrett. I mean that it's being in that little lodge that you guys have there and just being around everybody. It's and yeah, again, I think I don't there's you guys have made some I don't know how, but there's an air about it where it's just it feels like you can be really open about things there and that is powerful and it's this isn't supposed to be a mental health or suicide awareness podcast. Granted, it does come up because that's part of my story, but it's so much more common than you would realize. And even I just had a buddy on for the earlier this week for the episode that'll come out before yours. His name is Ross Izzard. And we were just supposed to come on and talk about he's a very successful dude and he's also a huge nerd about backcountry fly fishing. And we were supposed to just talk about all that stuff because he's an interesting guy. And the whole reason of this podcast is because I'm curious about people and I want to be able to talk with interesting people. And but same, he had a very similar experience to you. He's like, yeah, I went out into the mountains where no one would have found me and fully, I had that moment where I wasn't sure that I was going to come back. And he sat on a rock and he carries a gun with him when he goes out there because he's way, way out in the back country. But he's like, yeah, I sat on a rock with that 9 mil and just kind of had the same sounds like a very similar realization to you did or to the one that you had and it is so it's sad how much people struggle with that but I think being able to talk about this stuff can I don't know if normalizing it is the right word. I do maybe I guess maybe reduce the stigma around it a little bit but also draw attention to that fact like everyone deals with shit and everyone's going through something in their life. You may not see it but Man, you got to speak up. And it's just, I think it's cool. You're creating these, not only creating these opportunities for people to be in an environment that is conducive to them speaking up with the hunts, but also if you just like you do, you give a soft pitch about the encounter. If someone's not into it, you don't bug them about going. But if they do go, that's another one of those environments where they just might find, because they're around a bunch of other guys that are being vulnerable, somewhere where they can speak up or even fully realize like that they are in a spot like that. And I think that's really neat. But
I don't want to lose anymore. You know, I
yeah,
want
I
them to
mean
know their
it's
self
out of
worth.
control. Yeah,
It's out of
it is.
control. You know,
Absolutely. And that's, I wonder if I remember correctly, it's been a minute because I had tried looking into that number of 40 vets a day. And I don't remember ever actually being able to find any solid numbers on it, but the numbers that I was finding were put out by the VA. And it's like, okay, how much of that stuff is skewed too? Because
right?
that doesn't look great on the VA, but who knows if that's the real number? It's that it's not just vets, it's everybody. But I
They
mean,
don't have a safe environment, Zach. You know, nobody wants to talk to the wizard. You know, because there it is on your record. And it's another reason I believe in this place and I believe in what God has me doing. When somebody's name gets put on my heart, I can't sleep at night. I think about them. I pray about them. I worry and stew and want to get them up here for a hunt. Uh, I need to have that connectability. I want them to know that they're loved and they're appreciated. There's people out here that appreciate and that'll go out of their way to make them feel appreciated. And I actually appreciate. I'm not doing this for myself. Uh, I just want every man and woman to know that's struggling with it that there's another side to this. There's a whole life that you've been given. Uh, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
no. And
You know,
yeah, it's
I love to hunt and I love to fish. I don't hunt anymore at all. I still love to go. I've, I could count on one hand the amount of game I've harvested in the last 9 years. I just don't hunt anymore. Uh, they don't take life. I still hunt.
well, and that was actually I didn't fully expect us, I don't know where these conversations are going to go. I knew you and I were going to have a good conversation, but I expected that we'd get into some of the hunting stuff. You still guide people though, or is that just like when you go out with like Steve, is that just that's just because you guys are boys now, or do you still do that on the side? You just yourself won't aren't going to be the trigger man?
Just and there's an air about Steve. He is who he says he is. I really like that guy. He's so busy, but uh, he's got a good heart and he's a good man. One of my better friends, and he probably don't even know it. But well, I enjoy it like it gives me the desire back. Like he was up here a couple weeks ago and we went rabbit hunting. And I harvested a rabbit, and no, I didn't. I didn't like curl up in a fetal position and start crying. I enjoyed my time with him and his son. I love to see him get out with no cameras and be able to do what he still loves. And uh, but I haven't been out. The last time I did that was the year before when we were out together. I haven't taken life from one end to the other. You just feel comfortable around him.
Yeah, I didn't
But
realize that. I think I had obviously falsely assumed with you leading these hunts, like the one that you had me out, that turkey hunt that you had me out for, that and yes, Guy had a blind man on a turkey hunt and I killed a turkey. But I which we can get into that if you want. But yeah, I guess I had assumed that this was still kind of something that you eat, sleep, and breathe.
I eat, sleep, and breathe people being successful. Um, I love that. Like I had a buddy of mine. Man, he's a close friend of mine, but Brad Addison, who works for Missouri Department of Conservation. He, I baited him into going turkey hunting and going to men's encounter a few years ago, and you know, it turned his life around. But he does the veterans hunts. He got way heavily involved in it with me. And MDC has a program. What is the name of that? And
Missouri Disabled Sportsmen.
yes, thank you.
So shout out to those guys. If if you're in Missouri and you have a disability, go check them out.
Amen. They are a good group of guys. My brother-in-law, Chris Pardue, he's involved in that, several others. But, I called Brad and I was like, hey, look, I'm really thinking about taking Zach turkey hunting. And he's like, ain't that the blind dude? Brad's from the South. Ain't that the
Yeah.
blind guy? I'm like, yeah. He's like, let's do it. No more questions. Um, let's just do it. And, Dylan Wilson was gracious enough to offer me his place, and he wasn't going to let anybody hunt on it. That's where we went. Brad got the gun, had that sight on it. And look, we babied that place, took care of it. He had trail cameras out on it. Uh, everybody in the community was pulling for you and praying for you to get one. I don't think very many people thought we would, but man, uh, I you,
For for
it,
people who are listening, that site he is referring to, so they had an optic on this shotgun so that it could see what I couldn't, and then you guys on a phone could it's essentially a camera that's looking down the sights of the shotgun. And so you guys had me set up in a chair with I don't know what is that actually a hunting chair? I mean, I had a post that was between my legs and it was a rest for the shotgun. And
yeah,
you called a turkey in, which was just uncanny to hear. I've never been around someone doing the calls like that. It was being there in person was really neat. And they walked me in and talked me onto the turkey, and it was a pretty incredible experience.
it was one of the better hunts of my life.
Well,
Top
what was
10.
crazy was that was like I think it was almost exactly 3 hours after I had landed at the airport. You were like, "Hey, we're gonna get out here and try and get a couple hours on the blind tonight, and we'll just see what happens." And then I was done. I think I was there for the whole weekend, and I was done in like 2 hours after you had picked me up.
I did not see it going down that way. We didn't have a whole lot of afternoon pictures. Everything was in the morning, and I wanted you to experience everything, but the way it worked out, you got to experience everything. Just to reiterate, the same Missouri closes at 1. In Michigan, you can hunt all day, and uh, very thankful for that. But man, thankful for you saying yes and coming and doing it. It was a great experience, and yeah, it was a good weekend. We had, I don't know, 4 or 5 vets here, and everybody was successful. And uh, I've got spots that I only take veterans to, you know, and I've got people that offer their place that that's the hunt. They let me put up a pop up blind, and I hunt it one time a year, and that's those 3 or 4 days that them veterans are here. And I just want them to have the best experience that they can have while they're here, not only emotionally, but um, mentally and physically. We drive them right to the blind. Um, Everything is set up to cater to them, no matter what kind of state they're in. We want to offer them the best hunting experience possible.
Yeah. Well, and then even the time at the lodge, man, the time at the lodge was a blast. That was really cool. I still keep in touch with Mark. Yeah, it was that was a neat place. Do you have an actual organization behind that?
We do not.
Okay.
The only organization behind it is Encounter Ministry and the Veterans Ministry. Uh,
Okay. I wanted to make sure that we told people where to find it, but
and you can
okay.
find it through both of them. Uh, both of
Okay.
them. Yeah.
Cool. And I'll make sure that there's links to that in the show notes, but what else is going on for you right now? You got anything big coming up that you want to talk about?
Well, uh, yeah, I'm helping coach high school wrestling. I know about as much about wrestling as I don't even know if there's anything on the planet that I don't know any more about. Uh, but my son is his last year in high school, and I'm fixing to be an empty nester here in May, and he's got districts coming up, and he's doing okay this year. But it's just another one of those milestones in life, Zach. I always wanted to coach. I coached baseball last year. Now I'm coaching wrestling. Um, to be able to be with those kids and help them along, not only in whatever sport they've chosen, but their life, their career, their families, to be there for them. It was a link that's been missing in my life for way too many years. Just one more regret. I wished I would have done it sooner, but I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy coaching, and it's something that I want to continue to do.
Picturing you walking around in a singlet for no reason and like doing this thing where every time you like stop to say something real meaningful to someone, you like put your leg up on something like a Captain Morgan pose. I don't
They
know.
haven't got me in a single yet. I'm
Oh,
way too out of shape for that. But it's funny, my son, he knows I don't know much about wrestling. All I've been doing is watching him for years. And very first day of practice, he puts me right on my butt, right in front of the whole team. So we got that out of the way right off the bat. Um,
yeah, you know who top dog is. Yeah.
yeah, we got to know who top dog is. But other than that, I coach with a guy that has a lot of knowledge, and he leads the way. And, of course, the head coach. I'm just there to help. But yeah, it's really good. It's just one more avenue. No, I don't have to say no. I said no my whole life. I said yes to everything else. You know, but I always say, you show me a man who drinks every day and smokes pot every day, I'll show you the man I used to be. You show me a man that's quit all that, and I'll show you who I want to be every day. And um, I just want to live a better life, Zach. I want more Zachs in my life to help spread the word. That there's a better life on the other side of this. And I always tell people, well, I've never struggled with suicide. Let me be clear. I didn't struggle with suicide. I've killed everything that walks or crawled at one time or another, just about. Um, what I struggled with was not doing it. The doing it part was easy for me. I just didn't want it to be tied to a date, to an anniversary, to a birthday. I struggle to find time. It sounds like an excuse, but man, I know what it's like to be ready to check out. And I look back when I tell my story, I get so infuriated at myself about everything I would thrown away had I done that. You know, if it's one thing I could tell anybody that's thinking about it, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's a lie straight from the enemy. It's a lie straight from the pits of hell. Stand your ground. Somebody loves you. Somebody needs you in their life. If that somebody ain't there, come call me. I'll be that person. Um, I just want you
Yeah.
to know
And
that you're appreciated and you're loved.
yeah. And I mean, that's another thing. I talk about this a lot, but I just, I, I truly believe that by the time that you reach that point, you're not in a rational state of mind. Especially, sounds like you were doing everything you could to hide it. I was doing everything I could to hide it. My parents were at the house or at my house or my apartment the day before I shot myself and just thought I was tired and grumpy. I'd been struggling for like over a, a little over a year at that point, and then I went out and talked to my roommate minutes before I shot myself, knowing that I was about to shoot myself. Like, you're not in a rational state of mind. And so if you are one of those people that's has that thought in your mind right now, recognize that and speak up to somebody. There's a suicide hotline. I have called them once before. They will help you find someone and speak up. Guy, I would say that from what I've learned about you over the past 2 years, I think you're definitely living a better life than what you were before, about what you've explained to me and what you explained today. And I appreciate you, and I'm glad that I met you, and keep doing what you're doing.
You got a friend for life here, brother. And I'm plan I'm on plan to have you back up here turkey hunting this spring. Uh, I really want
I
you to come back, Zach, and I want you to bring somebody that needs it. You know,
yeah. Well, I'm definitely I'd be interested and I can find somebody. Um, I can for sure. And I'll put links in the show notes for people to find the Encounter website.
that Veterans Encounter too. Veterans
Okay.
Encounter is a little more laid back. I would suggest it for people, you know, uh, they can't sit for long periods of time or something. Both incredible, incredible avenues.
All right. Well, I'll do that and we can talk about the hunt. I still don't think the encounter is my thing personally, but if you're still open to not push it on me, then I'm open to do other stuff. But thanks again, man, for coming on.
Hey, you're welcome anytime. And I ain't gonna push it on you, but I'm never gonna stop praying for you, brother.
All
Love you,
right.
man.
I love you too. I appreciate you. And to everyone at home, thanks for listening to episode 10 of Going In Blind.